I don't know what you want me to say. These songs just sound nice. You see what I mean when I said it sounds like it's from a previous era, but not like in a weird or cringy. Many years ago, there was a show called Mr. Robot that I felt was firing on all cylinders: the music, the acting, the cinematography, the writing. And yet, I felt that that show did not receive its rightful amount of attention while it was airing. I get this same exact feeling for this show called Hacks that I just recently discovered literally last week. You could tell that Mr. Robot was crafted with a lot of love, a lot of focus, a lot of precision, that the people involved with creating the show knew exactly what kind of story they wanted to tell. And not only did they know that, but they had the means to bring it about. They executed it. And the fans themselves, although we were kind of few at the time, we were very passionate about that show. And in another previous video, I talked about Severance and how Severance reminds me heavily of Mr. Robot. It carries with it sort of the creative spirit of Mr. Robot, similar cinematography, similar uniqueness and harmony in terms of the music, the writing, the acting, the cinematography, and so on and so forth. I only found out about Hacks after both of the main characters' actresses had received an Emmy Award for their performances in the show this very year. I'd heard about Hacks when, almost a year ago, I had been looking at a YouTuber's list of the top shows of that year, and I'd remembered that they mentioned Hacks, and I'd marked it down in my Obsidian note taker, in my list, my very long list of things that I might want to watch anytime I get bored or when I'm looking for something to take my mind off things or distract myself, or I'm just looking for something new to enjoy. It wasn't until this most recent Emmys ceremony that I remembered it, and I remembered that this has been on my list. I hadn't watched it at the time when I first found out about it because, well, I judge things by their covers, and the poster that I had seen for Hacks wasn't the poster you see here in the video in the bottom left corner. It was a different poster, and for some reason I had assumed, without reading anything about the show, that it was more of a sort of documentary, or not like a real documentary, but like a mockumentary of like what it's like to be in the industry or whatever. I had no idea that there was any comedic elements in it whatsoever. And then I finally decided to watch the first episode, and to my surprise, it was almost a sibling of Succession, with its humor, yet dark drama, its very pristine and elegant writing, its dynamic, heavy writing. So the show is revolving around this main character of Deborah and how she interacts with Ava and with other people within the show. Ava is the secondary character of the show. Now, I'm not a musician, I'm not a cinematographer or a writer or a psychologist, so I don't have the proper words to describe how I feel about the music or the cinematography or the writing and blah, blah, blah. All I know is that I'm a member of the audience, I'm a viewer, and I know how the show makes me feel. So let's start with the music. Now, the song that you heard in the intro to this video was called Never Loved, and that is a song by a band called Parcels. It plays at the very end of season 3. And by the way, I'll just talk about the show from season 1 through season 4, episode 4, which is where I stopped right before making this video. One thing that I very much appreciate in movies or in TV shows is the soundtrack. In terms of movies, there is a superhero film that came out when I was a kid called Man of Steel. Very controversial Superman movie, but not going to talk about that. Let's just talk about the music. It was composed by Hans Zimmer, and as usual, it was a very, very good soundtrack. I credit the soundtrack of Man of Steel with having almost the most influence over my enjoyment and over my fond memories and fond feelings regarding that movie. There are people who have the conception that a soundtrack is supposed to fade into the background, that it is there to support but not really be noticed too deeply, or that the soundtrack is there to tell the audience how to feel. For instance, a very sharp noise in a track that occurs in a horror movie, or a very romantic tune or melody that plays in a romantic scene in a movie. But I think music is very, very evocative. And a good soundtrack doesn't fade into the background necessarily, but it almost becomes its own character or its own narrator in the show itself. That in the absence of a human narrator narrating things between scenes or within scenes, you have the music sort of guiding the viewer on what is happening, almost as if it is speaking to the viewer itself. But this kind of harmony and purpose within the music can only come when you have a very, very good composer at your disposal. Carlos Rafael Rivera is the composer for Hacks. The music he created here feels of a previous era, but not in a way that's corny or cringy or forced. It agrees very well with what we're seeing on the screen. It doesn't stick out like a sore thumb, and it doesn't stick out like a bridge between scenes. For instance, if you're watching something like Family Guy, for instance, as you come back from a commercial break, or as you transition between two very different scenes, you might have some sort of orchestration playing in the background for like 2 or 3 seconds that transitions you from one state of mind to another. The music in Hacks doesn't, it doesn't push you like a boat like that. However, it also doesn't fade into the background completely as to where you don't really notice it, where it's not really memorizable. It just kind of nestles itself there as part of the story, moving at the same pace, in the same spirit as the remainder of the show. And like I said earlier, I'm not a professional in any of these things that I speak of, so I can only explain it in terms of how it makes me feel, and similes and analogies to things, try and get across to you why I like a particular aspect of this show. The main discussion here will be in the psychodynamics between Ava and Deborah, which is the main draw of the show and the main thing that the show does so well. It is the main thing that made me love Succession so much, and all of you as well probably, and made me love Severance, and made me love Mr. Robot, and every other show I've probably loved. My favorite track here from Hacks is called Deb's Theme. It plays sometime within the first or second episode of the series, but that's kind of when I knew that the soundtrack was going to be golden. And I'll play my favorite part of it here for you guys right now. And then we have another one called Skip the Tasting that also appears in, I think, the first season. And it sounds like this. Listen, I don't know what you want me to say. These songs just sound nice. You see what I mean when I said it sounds like it's from a previous era, but not like in a weird or cringy way. It just sounds very nice. Whenever these tracks play in the show themselves, I rewind a bunch of times and then I head off to Spotify or to YouTube to actually find the specific track and add it to one of my playlists. Let's talk next about the cinematography within Hacks. The cinematographer for this show is someone by the name of Adam Bricker. Adam, if you are by some chance hearing this, I'm sorry, I can't make the thumbnail for the video sequence here that I put any bigger. HBO will literally tar and feather me to death. I can't make it any bigger. I'm scared of what they're going to do to my channel. Hopefully, this in and of itself does not grant me a copyright strike on my YouTube channel. I don't know what it is, but I would legitimately put the cinematography for Hacks like a notch below Severance. I'd put it on the level of Succession, or even better than Succession. It might just be recency bias here. But I don't know what it is, but it's so beautiful. The colors, the way everything works together, the outfits themselves that the characters wear go with the scene, the coloring, the lighting, the composition. Everything feels so pleasing to the eye. There's never a situation where, and this can happen oftentimes when I'm watching action movies or so on and so forth, where I actually close my eyes because just too much is going on. There's too many senses in my eyes being activated at once, and it's just not pleasing. And then I feel like I can, digest what's going on better if I just listen and close my eyes. But not with Hacks. My eyes are always open. I don't know how to convey why I like what I like in this show. The sequence here that I put together that you're looking at in the bottom left corner of the screen is little clips taken from like one part of one episode within season 4 that I recently watched. It's not even a compilation of what I believe to be the greatest shots within the show. It's just me picking an episode, scrubbing through the footage, picking a general section of the episode and then cutting out a few scenes here for you guys. But as you can see, it doesn't have any semblance of an amateurish feel to it. The cinematographer allows the shots to breathe, just like the composer allows the music to breathe, just like the actors themselves have a very good grasp of pacing, and the writing itself has a very good grasp of pacing. The cinematography itself, too, has a very fantastic confidence in itself. I'm fond of cinematography that allows me, as the viewer, to sort of stand at a distance and take in the scene. It's not constantly shoved in people's faces or running after people. This preference, I think, comes from Mr. Robot, where still shots with one subject in either the far left or the far right corner of the screen were very common. Severance also does a very similar thing, where it carries a lot of stillness and breathing room in the way that it is shot. And while Hacks doesn't have that same style, it does still scratch the part of my brain that was pleased by Mr. Robot and by Severance and by Succession and so on. So in short, the cinematography of Hacks has been led very well by Adam Bricker. Very great cinematographer. And there hasn't been a single episode, I think, that was just kind of not shot well. Nor has there been a scene where I felt I was being overloaded or that the cinematographer was not confident, and so they were pulling all of these tricks and games in order to get me to like the way that the scene was shot. It's just very elegant and very well pleasing to look at. And in terms of writing, Hacks is described on IMDb as being a dark comedy. And I don't know what, I mean, the words are pretty self-explanatory, dark comedy. But like I said, as someone who's not familiar with the industry or the terminology, if you don't understand what that means, I would describe Hacks as being a drama kind of like, again, Succession. I keep comparing to these few selection of shows, but like Succession, where it is a drama with very humorous elements in it, except this show is very much more focused on the humor. It is consistently and almost scene by scene funny, very, very funny. Whereas Succession, I don't think was focused on being funny, although it was oftentimes funny. The writing is very modern. The humor is very modern. It understands Gen Z very well in Ava. I get all the jokes. I think all the jokes are extra funny. The writing is also extremely compact. The episodes are not 1 hour long, they're 30 minutes, but it accomplishes what an hour of another show with writers who aren't as compact and with writing that isn't as succinct and well packaged. It accomplishes as much as they would do in an hour in the span of 30 minutes, while yet still having good pacing, not making me feel like the show is rushing, not making me feel like the show is dragging, and not making me feel like the show is hitting a series of bullet points that it needs to get to the next episode, to get to this next milestone in the larger season. It all feels extremely organic. When watching the show, you can tell that it was written by people who know what it's like to work as a writer, know what it's like to work in Hollywood, in show business, They have that deep understanding so that they can then use language that people in those real life industries would use, but use it in a way that is understandable and comprehensible to people like me who are outside of the industry. I think it's better for me to describe how I feel about the writing in terms of texture. The writing of the show is not like a croissant. I'm not French. I can't say the word correctly. You know what I'm talking about. A croissant. It's not like that. A croissant is full of air. It is full of a lot of pockets. That doesn't mean it's bad, but it's just full of a lot of air, a lot of pockets. It can be quite flaky. When you bite into it, it sort of breaks apart. The writing of Hacks is not like that, but it's also not like a piece of chocolate. Very, very compact and condensed, very solid. When you bite into it, it doesn't flake, it literally breaks apart and it crunches. And chocolate is not bad either. Now, bear with me. Chocolate, especially dark chocolate, is best enjoyed slowly. If you eat it too fast, it's too bitter and it's too overwhelming for your taste buds, nor are you anywhere close to being filled up or satisfied. A croissant is on the opposite end, light and airy. It's not bitter. It tastes good, but you are also likewise not filled up by eating it. And although you can become full by eating a lot of them, it's still not going to be nutritious. So on one end, you have this airy and crispy and large object, this croissant, which makes you full but not satisfied. And on the other end, you have this compact, dense, and smooth, but difficult to enjoy perpetually thing called dark chocolate. Hacks sort of exists in this state that is impossible to define using this analogy, but it's this state where you are satisfied yet not full. It's savory and sweet and delicious, but it is not overwhelming. You can keep eating and eating and eating without ever reaching that state of being completely full, but without getting frustrated because you are feeling nutritious, you are feeling well nourished, and you never enter this state of fatigue. I binge watched the first 3 seasons and then half of season 1 within, I believe, a week or so. There was not a single point in time where I felt tired or overwhelmed. I stopped watching particular episodes literally because I needed to get to sleep and wake up for work the next day, not because I said, that's too much for me. I can't take any more of this show today. I need a break. That never happened. And yet, I never felt like I was missing things by binge watching the show. The show's writing is very tight. When you watch it, there are a lot of callbacks to things that happened in previous seasons, in previous episodes. There are not many loose ends, if any, at all. And of course, the main attraction of the show, the dynamics between the characters, specifically the dynamics between Ava and Deborah, are very, very, very well written and well constructed. Right, so let's talk about the main attraction of Hacks, the part of the show that I believe is just so well done, so intelligently written, and that is the relationship between Ava Daniels and Deborah Vance. Now, on its surface, the relationship starts off as a mentor and mentee or mentor and student sort of relationship, or rather a mentor and a protege. I think protege is the better word here. But over the course of the seasons, and I'm only halfway through season 4, we begin to see this relationship. I'm not sure when it started, but we begin to see a transition into a work mother and work daughter relationship, or a pseudo mother or a pseudo daughter, or a stand in mother or a stand in daughter dynamic. And while the two of them work very brilliantly together professionally, this stand in mother and stand in daughter dynamic brings up a lot of conflict, a lot of compulsions, a lot of behavior that produces this sort of dark mentorship description that we see here in the IMDb summary of the show. So why are Ava and Deborah fighting so much in season 4? Now, I think we all have an instinctual kind of understanding of what's going on here, but there are pre-made words and terms to describe the type of personality that Ava has toward Deborah, and the type of personality that Deborah therefore then has towards Ava back. Now, we're going to use the attachment style terms to describe them. I'm not a psychologist, but I have a very, very, very basic understanding of these terms. So Ava would be considered the anxious, preoccupied individual. The anxious, preoccupied person, especially Ava, craves validation. Their sense of self comes from the validation and emotional closeness that they can get from a specific person who is their fixation at the moment. Ava's sense of self, her sense of stability, her sense of purpose, depends on Deborah's approval. While comedy was always, being a comedy writer was always her career of choice, we see that in season 4 or in season 3, she's not as passionate about pursuing comedy writing outside of Deborah. It seems to be that she derives a lot of fulfillment, a lot of happiness, a lot of ambition out of being around Deborah and helping Deborah achieve her own goals. Now, Deborah can be described as the avoidant dismissive. And that's very easy to tell what that means. She's avoidant and she's dismissive. She finds, avoidant dismissive people have a reaction to the appearance of emotional closeness that another person would have toward the appearance of danger or threat. They tend to view emotional closeness or the proposition of it as an impending doom, something that can hurt them. In Hacks, we see Deborah repeatedly, both at the end of season 2 and then again attempted at the end of season 3 and throughout season 4, try to push Ava away. Deborah likes to view herself as being wholly self-sufficient and wholly capable in and of herself, even though we see throughout the show that Ava does bring something to the table and that Ava does make Deborah's material better. So why then do the two of them, who work so well together, who seem to have, a spark between them when they write their jokes, why is it that they fight so much throughout this show? And that is because the two of them are sort of trapped in this anxious, preoccupied, and avoidant dismissive cycle that they can't seem to break out of. And we see that Ava has a mother, Nina Daniels, who is quite oppressive. Not oppressive in a, like one person oppressing another sense, but Nina Daniels is a bit scatterbrained. Her wants and needs are quite suffocating. Nina Daniels requires a lot of reassurance and validation from the people around her. When Ava's father died, that all sort of transitioned to Ava. We see Ava trying to bond and connect with her mother, but it doesn't always work out because Nina Daniels, like I said, she's a bit scatterbrained. She requires a lot of validation from Ava that Ava is simply too exhausted to give to her. In that relationship with Nina Daniels, there's not a lot of room for Ava's wants and needs to take root, as she's always busy catering to or trying to calm down her own mother. Ava's mother worries too much about herself, and she worries too much about Ava. And in doing so, she doesn't allow Ava to grow and to flourish and to be the kind of person that Ava wants to be. In Deborah, Ava sees a sort of good enough mother figure, a figure that is similar enough to her own mother, but different in the ways that Ava might have wished that her mother was different. For one, they are able to communicate with each other very well, whether that be through humor and jokes or just regular conversation. And again, they work very well together. This allows Ava to have this sort of harmonious relationship with this pseudo mother figure that she did not have with her own mother, to be able to bond with Deborah in ways that she could not bond with Nina Daniels, and to be in tune with this pseudo mother figure in a way that she wasn't able to be with her own. But Deborah is still a very narcissistic and difficult and dismissive individual, whereas Nina Daniels ends up having the effect of being dismissive by way of her, oppressive word vomiting or constant worrying. Deborah is outrightly and upfront and expressly dismissive to Ava in truth. But in that, oddly, because of Ava's desire to be in tune or in harmony with this surrogate pseudo mother figure, Ava sees a challenge. And Ava says, if I can get this narcissistic and outrightly dismissive and avoidant individual to see me and to validate me, then I will have gotten what I have been wanting since childhood. If I can get Deborah Vance to appreciate me, then I will be whole. On the other side, Deborah sees herself in Ava. She sees Ava as someone, a young woman coming up in the comedy industry. She, in certain senses, feels protective over Ava. She feels a desire to guide and teach Ava. She appreciates Ava's ambitiousness that rivals even her own. And just like Ava, Deborah also sees in Ava the shadow of her daughter, DJ, with whom she has a difficult or tense or traumatic relationship with. And so we see that as these two learn to work very well with one another professionally, and they transition into this work mother and work daughter relationship, the very transition into that new state of viewing one another brings up a lot of old wounds, a lot of old regrets, a lot of unmet desires and things that they wish could be different. In my opinion, it's almost as if Ava, the motivating factor for Ava is that she wants to be, in some ways, a good daughter to Deborah. And Deborah, likewise, wants to be a good mother to Ava. However, Deborah's avoidant, dismissive compulsion, brought about by factors that came before she ever met Ava, prevent her from really reciprocating in this relationship in a way that would be healing for the two of them. Deborah has some narcissism, some dismissiveness, some prioritization of her wants and needs and feelings over everyone else's. In the show itself, we see that Deborah is the recipient of a lot of sexism, a lot of rejection, and we can theorize and infer, and I think the show wants us to infer, that these compulsions of her, these ways that she behaves to other people, are a direct result of her prior experiences with people. Being denied things because she's a woman, being rejected for things because she's a woman, having people scrutinize her because she's a woman. The souring of her relationship with her daughter, DJ, because she was DJ's mother, and she was not able to be there for DJ because of her ambition and her pursuance of a comedy career. And so as they grow closer together, they begin to fight more and more. They begin to fight because as they grow closer, they are transitioning from a purely mentor and protege relationship into a mother and daughter relationship. And because they both have old wounds that are being brought up, it is making them have constant conflict with one another, mostly brought up on Deborah's end, I believe. Their fighting is symbolically replaying the ways in which their relationships with their respective either mother or daughter failed, and lashing out at that. Deborah is saying to Ava, "You're not going to demand of me my emotional closeness and validation and affection and approval, because that is a threat to me. That is danger to me. That is going to take something away from me, whether it be my autonomy, my ability to pursue my hopes and dreams, and so on. I'm not even going to give you the impression that I was ever going to give you those things." And Ava says to Deborah, "I'm not going to allow you to treat me like my own mother treated me, to be dismissive toward me, to be oppressive in wants and needs, to not hear what I'm saying and take that into account." But even with all of this fighting, and in season 4, the fighting gets nastier and nastier. Even with all of this fighting, I, as the audience member, still sense some affection within their fighting. Their constant fighting almost seems like another way of persisting their relationship, without doing what the other person wants them to do. So in a way, it's kind of tragic that they are both tormenting one another perpetually, but at the same time, they are also having such great potential to heal one another. The bond between Ava and Deborah, I think, has the potential to be very, very beautiful. Ava can finally be seen by this pseudo mother figure, and Deborah can finally have an emotional connection with this pseudo daughter without losing autonomy, because Ava is a sufficient adult in and of herself. She doesn't actually need to be parented by Deborah. So if they would just work that out, I think they have the potential to heal one another in a very, very powerful manner without Deborah having to give up late night or Ava having to just go off somewhere and never talk to Deborah again. And of course, we still have the original mentor and protege relationship with Deborah's experience helping sharpen Ava, and with Ava's sort of newness or rascal tendencies helping to bring some freshness and some rejuvenation to Deborah's traditional way of doing comedy. And again, I think the end of season 3, where Ava outsmarts Deborah through blackmail, kind of sums it up, what I was saying earlier with their fighting also being a way to sort of persist the relationship, as we can see even in the way that the scene was acting, that Deborah was a little bit proud of Ava for being able to fight for what she wants, being able to go through with it, and being willing to hurt Deborah just so that she can maintain her position as the head writer. Like I said in the beginning of this, I discovered Hacks literally like 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I binged all the way up to halfway through season 4. Before I watched season 4, episode 5, I decided to just make this video here. I really, really, really think that you should watch this show. If you haven't, there's probably no one who hasn't watched this show still listening to this video, but if you haven't, watch it. I think it's a crime that it's popular. I'm not saying it's like no one's watching it. It's popular, but it should be way more popular than it is currently. I want it to be as popular as a show like The Bear, or as popular as a show like The Pitt was in its first season this year. And I want it to be popular because I want more shows like this being made. This is a very unique film, TV show, and I just love it. I'm not the kind of person who typically follows, people's projects to see what they're working on, but I think I will be following Paul W. Downs, Lucia Aniello, and Jen Statsky, as well as Jean Smart, Hannah Einbender. I'll be following all these people, even the cinematographer, Adam Bricker. I love that cinematography once more. Right. Thanks for watching the video.